So I'm using 0.5 fine silver, and I'm cutting 2 discs 19 millimeters diameter. I'm going to use my jeweler's hammer, and I've just got a steel block on a piece of timber. And oftentimes it's easier to work on your lap than it is to get up and go over to the anvil and bend over in an uncomfortable position. I'm just going to do a radiating pattern. So I'm just visually working from the middle. Yep. Now this was half hard when I started, but because it's fine silver, if you needed to anneal it, it would be fine because it's not going to oxidize. So make both of your discs roughly the same pattern. Tidy up the edge with your sanding stick if you want to. There's nothing sharp on this, so it's not going to be a problem. And I'm going to chuck them in the tumbler anyway when I'm finished. So up to you. Now I want to drill 2 holes in these, one for the ear wire and one for the pearl peg. So I'm marking these on the back 2 millimeters. So I want one on the top and one on the bottom. So I'm using the round burr in my handpiece because I want the mark to be able to drill, so we're just holding this sideways. So we end up with the little divot so that our drill will go in. The reason I'm not using a punch and a hammer is I don't want to distort this metal. So I do all 4 of your spots. We're going to drill each one of those spots using a 1 millimeter drill bit, and just position it on your bench peg so that it's straight up and down. And you want a fairly firm pressure, because unless you're pushing reasonably hard, the drill bit will just sit on top and get this nice and hot so that you can't handle it. So decent pressure, and if you have a sharp bit, it'll just go right through. I'm going to tidy up the burr marks from my drill hole, and I'm just using a stone setting burr, quite a bit bigger, and it's just so you can spin it up and it takes that little burr off. Done. Now we're going to make our ear wires, 50 mil long, 0.8 diameter. And you can just cut this with your side cutters. Make sure they're the same length. Hold it in your fingers, just let a little bit stick up. Number 2 cut, flat hand file. It doesn't take much to make that nice and flat. So do both ends, then 400 grade paper, back over the end, tidy it up, and then we'll form the ear wire. Flat round pliers, and we're putting a mark on the round bit of the length of the drop that we want. And I'm same thing with the size of the loop that we want for the disc. It's just so that we can use our pliers to measure. So for the loop, I'm using the first mark. Let the end of the wire stick out slightly past the pliers. Roll that nice and tight against your finger until it touches. Slip it down, slip the pliers down, and make the loop in the middle. Then slip this up to your next mark. So now that's on the other side of the pliers. Push down 45 degrees. Put that over to the other side. Come up to the large part of your pliers. Up and over. And a little kick in the end. So that's your ear wire. Make another one. Put them side by side. Make them the same. So when you have them matching, open the loop sideways like you would a jump ring. Put your disc on. And these are slightly wavy from me hammering them, and I quite like that. I'm going to leave that. So just put that on. Close your loop so that it touches at the back so the disc won't come off. Now I'm going to make a pearl peg, and this is assuming that you don't have square wire. You could use 1 millimeter wire. This is 0.9, and I'm just going to hold it. I've got a little bend in the end so that I can orient it. So I'll hold it flat in the beginning. And just using my jeweler's hammer, I'm going to hammer the length, and then I'll turn it 90 degrees. So there, I have my square pearl peg wire. Now, what I'm going to do is heat the end so that it balls up a little bit, cut it to length, twist it, and we'll insert it from the back of this, so no soldering. So I'm holding the wire straight up and down. We get our neutral flame. And I'm just a little bit off to the side. Yep, so I just want the ball like this. I'll turn this around. And zoom in so that you can see this. So just a little bit to the sides so that if it does drop off, it doesn't drop into our torch. We just want a little bit of a ball. So quench this. You don't have to make that much. It's just that I hammered that much, so I clipped it off my other wire. So now you're going to grab these ends with your parallel jaw pliers and give it a nice twist. Now clip this about 8 millimeters long from the end. Do both of them. Now these are going to be our pearl pegs, and we're just going to insert those from the back. Then we'll cut it to length, try our pearl for fit. If it's correct, then we'll glue it and put our pearl on. So you'll just have a little shiny spot on the back. No soldering. Yeah? Now I haven't pickled these yet, and as soon as we pickle them, then that's it. Everything's nice and shiny. So at this point, chuck these in a tumbler to shine them, because as soon as we stick these in, we're finished. So check your little peg for length and for fit, and you only need 0.5 thickness between the edge of your pearl and the edge of the ball. Cut it with your side cutters. So now we're ready to assemble, and I'm just going to stick my pearl peg up from the back. Let it rest on my bench block, and that way I can just glue a spot on the peg, on the pearl, drop it on, and that's it. So this is what I'm using. 5-minute 2-part epoxy, and we don't need a lot, so just a little spot of each, an equal amount of each, and I'm using a cocktail toothpick because it's pointed. So mix it up very well. One little spot on the end of your pearl peg. A spot on the end of the pearl, and drop it down on the peg. Push it to make sure it's seated, and that's it. So you can see that I've just pushed down on the top to make sure the pearl is in place. Now at this point, leave that alone. I have my toothpick sitting in the glue so that I can come back in a few minutes and I can just check to see that this is set. If it is, then our earrings are finished. So this is it, our little pearl earrings, no soldering, with just a tiny bump on the back. Ta-da! Shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. Ciao!